Alexis, I am so looking forward to this conversation for the things that I know about your story, but also the beautiful tidbits that you're going to share with us. I just really appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Wendy. I'm so glad to be here.
It's such a vulnerable, glorious expression to write a book that is a
Mhm.
memoir, that is telling stories that um, only you knew about
Yeah.
prior. And I want to ask you so many questions about the book and anything else that's on your heart. And then I have also, the usual question.
Yeah.
So let's just start there
Okay.
because listener, sorry to sound disjointed, but I don't always have a copy of the book that our guest has written. And in this case, I do. And I started it yesterday. And I was bummed that I had things on my calendar that I couldn't just read the whole thing because it's beautifully written and so vulnerably shared that I want to get right into those questions. But
Mhm.
so, sweet Alexis, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
Well, I think we'll touch on much of this in our conversation, but
Yeah.
for me, saying yes in these last few years has been to tune into the pain that I have had locked away. And I'm sure we'll also talk about how I've done a lot of psychedelic journeys to help me find healing. And
Mhm.
the repeated message there was to come back to yourself, to not look outside yourself. And so it's been this really lovely time of both healing what I've, stored away, but also discovering these parts of myself that I didn't even know were there. So I continue to say yes by tuning in and seeing what else there is to learn about me that I didn't know. I feel like all the time I'm going, oh my God, I didn't know that was there. Both painful things, but also very beautiful things.
Which is just the story of all of our journeys,
Yeah.
right? And we're all, I believe, just leading each other home and
Hmm.
sharing our stories is how we do that. We're in explaining our experience and the modalities and methods and practices and awarenesses that helped us take the next step that eventually led to where we are now, that it is acting not necessarily as a roadmap for somebody else, but an encouragement to investigate their own roadmap.
Sure. Yeah. Seeing what other people are doing or how they're feeling or how they're making their way sparks something in us. And when it sparks something in us, that's an indicator, hey, there's something there. Can you look and find that in your own journey?
Right. And it takes intention and it takes inspired action and it takes bravery and courage. And I love the way that you have so beautifully invited people in to your story. But I'd love to hear what you want today's listeners to know, what you're finding as this book is out in the world. So much work and healing and discovery happened that got you ready to write it. I'm sure
Hmm.
so much more happened in the process of writing it. And, now it continues as you're interacting with other people and how they're internalizing the work. So, how has
Yeah, I
that
mean,
been for you?
it's been a roller coaster.
I bet.
I mean, a beautiful one. I can say now, having, you know, I see these periods, and Dr. Sue Morter is this brilliant spiritual teacher who talks about these periods of anchoring where you go deep into,
Mm.
stillness and into the emotions and all the things that need to be healed. And then once you're through that period, you can then grow more, right? The creativity and the expansiveness comes from that deepening. And so I have been in a deepening period for a while.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm finally coming out of that. And even actually, I'll share, just 2 days ago, I started writing the second book. So that's very
Good for you.
exciting.
Hooray.
But it's been a long time. I mean, I wrote the book. The book was being written as I was living it. So I kept waiting for
Yeah.
the epilogue. I was like, well, what am I trying to say? And I hadn't lived it yet. And so then I had
Yeah.
this ayahuasca ceremony that led to, oh, this is what this, I didn't know it was culminating into this, but this is what it is. And there are things like, I met my partner, and much of the book is about how I relate with him and how much growth I had in that relationship, because he was a mirror for me. All of these things that I had not
Mm,
had, I wasn't ready for them before meeting him. And then I was ready, and he showed me all sorts of stuff that I had to heal. So there's this period where I was like, is the ending of this book that I get the guy?
right,
Like that
right.
feels very precarious. Like, what if we break up? It felt like, that I needed more to the ending, and the ending certainly was not the guy. I mean, he's a beautiful person, has helped me grow so much, but it is about getting myself, right? Finding
Right.
the self and self-love. So the book itself was such a beautiful thing, and I loved it so much. I love it so much. So then to share it with the world, and I had all sorts of, kind of conversations with the psychedelics as I was still working with them. I'm not right now, but about what it was going to be. So I had a lot of expectation about what would happen with the book.
Mm,
And then, of course, it didn't go as my human ego self thought it would. And so there was a lot of flailing about that ultimately led to some profound realizations about, some just really, really, really deep pain that I had not uncovered before.
mm,
And through that experience, even though it felt at the time like I didn't know what I was doing, actually, my higher self did know what I was doing, right? I led myself into the situation where I would feel very unsafe or uncertain, so that I could dig deeply into those wounds and then find
mm.
more freedom on the other side. So we could speak more in more detail about that. But it's
Yes.
been a beautiful journey of leading myself into places that are really painful, so that I could unlock those pieces and find
Right.
more spaciousness and more beauty.
Oh my gosh. It's so courageous. And I think you and I might have this trait in common
Mhm.
that once like when I come up against a growth edge and I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. That's kind of shadowy. Let's get a
Yeah.
flashlight in there. Like I want to
Yeah.
excavate that and I want to not find the lesson, but become the woman who has the learning on the other side of the healing and
Yes.
all the things. So as unsure or potentially scary, doing something big or going deeper could seem, there's also this like, oh, but
Hmm.
now I know this about me. Now I know
Hmm.
this. So are you finding that it is, maybe uncomfortable still to to go on that next journey of discovery and healing, but there's also kind of a desire because of the result that you've had on the other side in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so much. It's like discovering these parts of myself is almost more than I can handle, like the more joy than I can handle.
Right.
It is so different than what I feared. I thought life was just
Oh,
the life that I had was the life that I was resigned to, and that's all you can ask for. And then you go through these really rough periods, and you really surrender to them, and you find out, oh my God, life is so much more beautiful than it is as beautiful and more beautiful as I really hoped. It's like I couldn't acknowledge that hope, because it felt like it was just foolish to hope that life can be beautiful. And then you get there, and it's so relieving to go, no, those parts of ourselves that are hoping for something more, those are pointing to something that's true. What an amazing thing to think that the hopes and dreams and all the stuff in our hearts are actually pointing to something that is real, instead of something that's silly and that we should shut down in life is just actually quite terrible if you're honest with yourself. If it's like, if you're honest with really how you feel, and I'm not putting this on anyone else. This was my experience. If I were really honest with how I felt, in fact, the first sentence of the book is, if you die today, your life will have been a tragedy. And this was a voice that I heard on a walk when I was 38 in 2020. And it was a moment where it made me be really honest about how I felt about my life, that I was deeply lonely and deeply sad. And there's something that it was, there's terrible about acknowledging that, but there's also something actually quite, there can be ecstatic about acknowledging these things because it's true. It's how I really felt. So I finally got to be honest about that. But what it did is it made the way for, you know, a a path that is not easy, but a path that led me to these deeper realizations about how beautiful life actually is, about how much love there is. I mean, I don't even think I knew what love was before that,
For
before
sure.
going through this. Like at one point, my editor said, "I think you should name it Pain. Your book, Pain is a Portal to Love." And I think that's true. It is how I discovered what love is and how I found so much love in my life. But I didn't even know what love was on the other side. So beauty to me felt like a more tangible, like I can understand going through this for something that is beautiful. I can't quite understand for love because love can be obligation. Like for me, it was from fear, obligation, all of these things were mixed into what I
Hmm.
thought love was.
Sure.
Um, but anyway, I don't even
And
know
I
where we
think
started.
the idea, not even the idea, but some people's conception when they read the word love is how the it's reciprocal, and
Yeah.
beauty, we know, is in the eye of the beholder. So it
Yeah.
feels more like this is one person's experience
Hmm.
and not something to potentially give us a warped definition of love all over again.
Right. Right. And again, that's where I was like, is this book about finding the man? I mean, I jokingly have a
Yeah.
chapter titled Finding a Man, as if that was the goal. Because I was sitting with my nephew and I was telling him about how he was 17. I was telling him about how all of this crazy spiritual stuff and how wonderful things were and how it led me to my partner on Match.com. I had another voice that led me to this
Okay,
man
good. I'm not
specifically.
to that part yet in the
Okay,
book.
you'll find
So
out.
yay, yay.
And and he said, "So you're telling me all this is worth it so you can find a man?" And I was like, "No, of course not." But I say on second thought, that's exactly what I mean because that was a dream of mine. And so it is
Right.
appropriate. I can find like finding a man
Totally.
can be part of this, but it is certainly not the biggest gift here or the gift here, which is finding my way to my own love.
Well, right. I mean, and obviously, not obviously, we know in the work that we're doing, you and I individually, but also the listener, that it's not outside of us.
Hmm.
So finding yourself, you reference Catherine Woodward Thomas's book, Calling in the One, and how that I've only read Conscious Uncoupling, but how the
Hmm.
premise of Calling in the One is repairing and healing and leaning into your relationship with you, how you
Right.
are the one. You are
Exactly.
creating these experiences in relationships, romantic relationships. Um, so I love how your discovery, just like all of ours, it's just the journey home to ourselves. It's
Yes.
not, well, if this person would have acted this way, then this, then that. I'm only in the beginning of your book, but you talk about the completing of your marriage, and I am just completed a 3.5 year long divorce process. But similarly to your experience, it was a decision we had to make, or it's a decision that I had to make for myself, but it wasn't a result of an action that all I would have to say to anybody else is, oh, he cheated on me or he beat me, because
Sure.
that was not what happened. That would have made it a lot easier than, this is just loveless and not. I'm not available for that. And
Yeah.
I'm not available to model that to my daughter. So
Yeah.
I appreciated that part of your story, just how it resonated with me. And I'd love to know, because I'm not to the part yet where you exercise your decision to use psychedelics. So how did that happen, and what was your experience?
Well, I mean, going back to the voice in the woods, that really just
Yeah.
tore everything apart and said, this is not working. So, right. So
Yes,
that led
please
to,
catch everybody up that hasn't read what I've read. Sorry.
it led
I
to
was
my
like, I've
divorce.
been
No, no,
waiting
it's
to ask you.
psychedelics are kind of like the fun part to talk about. Um, but everything started crumbling at once. So my marriage, we separated and then ultimately decided to divorce. Within my family, we had a falling apart as well. And and my heart was never, I was a financial consultant and I love doing financial modeling. I love Microsoft Excel, but my heart was never in it. And so I knew the career thing was something that I was going to let go, and friendships kind of fell away. Everything was falling away.
And it
And
was
so
2020.
and it was 2020 when everything was falling away
Yeah.
for lots of people. So um, during the same summer when I heard the voice in the woods, I got a call to help a company do. I was to build a financial model for this educational institution that teaches psychedelic guides. And I had never heard, I mean, I didn't know anything about psychedelics. My mom was a drug addict. And so for me, I said, I'll never do drugs. And when I was, 13 years old, and never did drugs and didn't pay attention to them, it just wasn't part of my world. So I was like, sure, I'll take on this client. And they were really lovely people, and they were so generous. Like they wanted, there were so many donors. They wanted other people to find healing through psychedelics as they had. So I just was, it just came into my awareness. But, I joke in the book how I didn't even know how to spell the word psychedelics. I didn't know that there was more than one kind of psychedelic. So I was really new to all of this. And it wasn't until months later when I called a life coach she's the one who had actually introduced me to the school. And she said, have you ever, you might consider doing psychedelics as part of your healing journey. So I spoke with, so the point is at that point, my life had fallen apart. So I think psychedelics can be intimidating to people who think I'm surrendering control. I don't know what I'm going to find. I don't know what's on the other side of it. But for me, I had already, I'd been laid bare. So it's like
Yeah.
let's, I'm willing to look at it. And then I met with the guide, and she was brilliant, and she was trained in
Mm,
Western, all of the trauma stuff. Like she just was so, frankly, she may have been the best therapist that I had seen to date, where
yeah.
she knew her stuff from a Western perspective, but she also had this, psychedelic spiritual side to add to it. So I was like, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm in deep grief about losing my marriage,
Yeah.
and I don't have anything else going on. And she was like, do you have a support team? And I said, sure. But by the time I did the psychedelics, that support team had even fallen away. So,
Right.
but she was incredible. I knew I was safe with her. And I just I have we all have our capacities, and I have always had a sense for what's safe. I knew that this was
Hmm.
okay for me to do. So I checked all the boxes to make sure that it wouldn't crack me open. But her point was, if you've done a ton of internal work as I had, then this is not going to show you stuff that you're totally shocked to find. Some people, if you've never done any internal work, then you might find your world turned upside down. But I had to make sure I could show up for my son. And so we started with MDMA. Again, I
Okay.
didn't know there was more than one
I
kind
don't
of
know
psychedelic.
anything. So, yes.
MDMA is ecstasy. So
Okay.
I also didn't know that MDMA or ecstasy was a psychedelic drug. So I thought we were doing psilocybin. Had ingested the medicine. I was very happy. And I said something about psilocybin, and she said, "You're not on psilocybin, you're on Molly." And I said,
And I
so
wouldn't know what those words are either. So
right, like
this is so great.
exactly. It's
Thank
like
you.
I had been so sheltered from this, but what the school that I had consulted for, that's where I found the guide, and their practice is to start with MDMA. So MDMA lowers the fear response so
Okay.
that you can start to look at some of these feelings that can feel too
Sure.
scary.
Okay.
So this school starts with MDMA to help work through some of that ego level trauma
Sure.
before going on to psilocybin, which feels like a heavier weight kind of psychedelic, where
Okay.
you actually can lose your sense of self, which sounds terrifying, but actually helps you feel more connected. Like it helps you
Right.
understand, your place in the world better.
Mm.
Um, so those are the two that I started with, and MDMA was wonderful. Psilocybin took me straight to the underworld. It was very scary and hard and sad.
Mm.
um, but the guidance for my first psilocybin journey was you have more grief to work through, and it was unapologetic. These mushrooms were not my friends. They were
Right.
they were gremlins dancing with my dead mother's teeth, and they were just barking at me
Mm.
stuff. And I was just like, compared to the MDMA golden light experience, it was so
Right.
much harder. But they just showed me what was there, and I accepted that, and I did more grief work, and my life and the integration, my life started to become more beautiful. I'd walk outside and the trees looked different to me. Like it just
Sure.
opened up my capacity to see by releasing some of this grief.
Right. Because none of us have any idea how our past is affecting our present because
Right.
it's all we've ever known.
Right. It's just
And
your lens.
right. So I'm really appreciative of your experience of you going first, of writing the book about it, and just kind of guiding not only the reader, but today the listener and me through this process and why someone would want to do this. I think you spoke to one of the most important pieces is that feeling of safety.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that I had someone recently who said, I know someone who's having like a oh, what was it? Just some crisis, and I think they should do mushrooms. And I said, no, they should see a therapist. Like you don't
Right.
start with this stuff. And I'm not saying, I mean, to each his own, but certainly for me, it was critically important to feel safe and to know that I was with someone who was trained from a Western therapy perspective, so that they could help me navigate that safely. You know, we have to show up in our lives, and who wants to throw out that level of control?
For sure. Because how long, just practically speaking, like
Yeah.
when you had your first experience, how long was it until you felt as much like yourself again as you could with this new piece of information?
Yeah, it's interesting because I did ultimately two MDMA ceremonies and a few psilocybin ceremonies, and then ayahuasca was the one actually that I did the most, and we can talk about that. But
Yes, please.
um, the first MDMA ceremony was just delightful. So I just went out into the world to tell everyone how wonderful it was. I mean, instantly. I will say at the very end of it, when I was coming off the medicine. So you do it, maybe 4 to 6 hours is
Okay.
when you're on the medicine. And as I was coming out of the medicine, I had a part of me, a young part of me, that was started really panicking. So again, this is
Mm,
where the journey itself was quite peaceful, but at the very end, I was so grateful that I had my therapist right there on the couch with me,
for
basically to
sure.
help me as I needed to figure out how to attend to this hurt part of me that was coming up at the
Yeah.
end. But the integration of that journey was just lovely because it's like, oh, I didn't know this, but I'm a spiritual being filled with golden light. That's
Yay.
wonderful to know.
Congratulations.
Whereas the second one that showed me about the grief work, what's interesting is when I had these harder journeys, like the psilocybin, I had multiple that were really, they took me to dark, dark places. And
Mm,
I wanted that, like you were saying earlier. I
right.
want the dark because I know it brings me to more light. But they
Right.
have taken me to some really dark places. And those somehow are actually easier to integrate from, because then you have
Mm,
the darkness there,
right.
and then in the integration, you're back to your life, which is brighter than the underworld where you just
Right.
were. And it's kind of, I had my directive, like, okay, whenever I have grief, I'll do my best to make space for that so that I can really let it
Mm.
come out. So the integration after some might call a bad trip in a
Well,
non-therapeutic
right. If
context.
you didn't feel safe and you
Right.
woke up in a parking lot, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be a
That would
bad trip.
It would be a bad trip.
Yeah.
Um, the harder journeys actually were easier to integrate from because I did the hard with the medicine. There
Mm.
was one psilocybin journey that I had that was just delightful. It was this huge party, and I just, it was so much fun, and when I came out of it, I actually felt very depressed because it was like, well, I
Mm,
just was shown all of this goodness. How do I find that in my human life?
right.
So it is interesting that the darker journeys actually for me felt quite natural to come out of because it was like, okay, there's more darkness, but I can find I have a path toward finding the light in my life.
Right.
So I don't feel destabilized for long. You know, maybe
Yeah.
ayahuasca has been more intense for me. So I don't, do you know of ayahuasca? I think many people
Nope.
don't. But it is gaining more popularity. It is an Amazonian, you know, spiritual ceremony, and it's now kind of finding its way out of the Amazon toward other parts of the world. But
I have heard of it, but I don't know what it
yeah, and
entails.
so instead of having the one-on-one
Okay.
ratio, you have, for me, I've been in tribes where there's two ayahuasqueros, that are leaders of the
Okay.
ceremony, and maybe 12 to 20 people.
Oh,
So
wow.
the
Okay.
ratio is not one to one, and that
Right.
made me nervous. There's also, you throw up. There's a
Oh,
purge in
gosh.
ayahuasca, and so you throw
Okay.
up, or it doesn't always have to be throwing up, but it could be shaking or just crying. I mean, all sorts of things. But it's just getting this
Hmm.
energy out of your body. So that
Sure.
sounded quite terrible to me. I
Right.
didn't
In a
want to do
group.
that. Um, but again, you know, when your life is declared a tragedy by some mysterious voice, you're just kind of willing to try stuff. And since the
Right.
psilocybin journeys had been so dark and painful, my guide said, "Hey, you might try ayahuasca. You know, different plants speak to different people."
Mm.
And for me, ayahuasca ended up being the most meaningful psychedelic experience and healing experience I had. I've done maybe 10 to 15 ceremonies
Oh,
over the
wow.
last couple of years. And the healing has been, I mean, you come out of there with your mind, you know, totally blown every time. Like, how can I see the world this way? So there might be more of a coming back to finding your equilibrium again after that,
Hmm.
but always with so much love and so much release
Mm.
that it's an incredible experience.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for you. And
Thank you.
I'm grateful for your tour guide
Yeah.
to this world as well. It's just so beautiful to be reminded that everybody is on their own path and
Yeah.
that everyone has their own journey, and some parts of our pain are similar and some parts of our healing are similar, but we're all wanting to be the best version of ourselves that we can be.
Yeah.
And there's only so far that we can go on our own. And so far we can go with the healer that has come into our life, the therapist,
Right.
the mentor, the coach, the healer, and then this next level. How has this, I guess my real question is like, how do you even have conversations with people that are not doing any of the quote unquote work?
Yeah. Um, I think I've struggled with that on and off. And I think that the more that I realize that I have everything I need within, then I just rest in my own body. And then anyone I come into contact with, I can just I just have compassion for them. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that you know, I'll get
Right.
triggered
No,
by somebody and I'll
totally.
have my work to do. And I'll for a minute, I'll want to blame them. And then I'll realize, oh,
Yeah.
shoot, this is my pain that you know, ultimately I'm grateful for their trigger so that I can
Right.
go find more healing. But I was at an event recently where I was with this person, and I know they're not comfortable in my presence. I just
Sure.
for many reasons. I know they don't like to be around me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm always kind of holding their anxiety. It's like I'm okay,
Right.
but they're anxious, and I feel it's like I hold their anxiety, and it's like, oh, then here we are both holding this anxiety,
Right.
and I realized, oh, I don't have to hold that. And so what happens is then I don't hold their pain. And then I'm just like this empty vessel where I can just be present and kind and
Mm,
generous. And there was an energetic shift when I did that. I saw them
yeah.
over 2 days, and over on the second day they came up and talked to me. And it was like,
Right.
look at that, where, you know, I can be knotted up with this other person about
Mm-hmm.
what I perceive as their pain. Who
Totally.
knows if
Right.
I'm correct about that?
Right.
Or I can just let it go, and then they get to be where they are, and I can
Yeah.
be loving and present, and that's
Right.
it. So for me, we all are, like you said, we all want to be the best version of ourselves. We're all doing the best we can with the lens that we have and with the
Mhm.
experiences we've had. So I certainly believe that everybody deserves compassion for exactly where they are, and they get to be where
Right.
they are. And anytime I struggle with where somebody else is, that's my struggle. That's
Hmm.
about my not being
Yeah.
in my body. That's the and again, that's I don't judge that either.
Right.
I get to struggle.
Yep.
But when I can find peace in just being where I am, then others get to be where they are as well.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's such glorious work in and of itself. Just that
Hmm.
reminder of I'm only responsible for my experience of my experience,
Yeah,
and everyone else gets to have theirs as well.
yeah.
How has this journey played out in your parenting?
Yeah, that's been an interesting. I mean, I write about that a bit in the book. Um, I One of my questions initially to the guide was, okay, so let's say I get everybody, we're all one. I love everybody. I was like, but I need to love my kid. Like I'm
Right.
responsible for this kid. I don't want to lose my
Right.
love for my kid. So if I love everybody the same, do I
Hmm.
then love my kid basically less in relation because he's no longer, most wonderful gift in my life? And she said, oh
Right.
no, that's not how this works. She said,
Okay.
the love we feel is amplified by these experiences.
Yes.
So my love for my son has just like this lets me be back more in my
Right.
magical self, so I can take in more of
Mm.
his 9-year-old now magic.
Yes.
And then he picks up on that energy.
For sure.
He knows that I'm totally loving and
Yeah.
delighting in him. So he brings more goodness.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then, just like the cycle
Yeah.
that feeds itself. So our relationship has really become much more affectionate. I mean, I loved him always, of
Of
course, but
course.
there's more openness on my end.
Yeah.
And there are things all the time where, he makes a mistake and he's carrying this intense energy about those mistakes. And I know
Mm.
now, right, that some of that's from his own life experience, but some of that's from mine. And I couldn't make mistakes because my depressed mother was fading away. And so I
Right.
had to be this perfect child. I wasn't consciously aware of this. I thought I
Right.
was just who I was. But looking back, I packaged this very charming, delightful,
Sure.
kind, package to keep my mother alive.
Yeah.
And so, our kids carry our emotions in their body as we carry our parents' emotions in our body. And so
Yeah.
sometimes I see his huge reactions to things that seem very small, and I think, oh God, that's me and
Mhm.
him. And so
Yeah.
it helps me just to have that awareness and say, hey, first of all, and can we have some context for this? First of all, we're really strong, right? Facing your
Mhm.
pain lets you understand how incredibly powerful you are and how incredibly
Yes.
powerful everybody is. So for me, it
Yes.
helps me to help him see how powerful he is, how strong he is, but also to say sometimes we have stuff in our bodies, we have these huge emotions that don't make a lot of sense to us,
Hmm.
and it may be my emotion or it may be your grandmother's emotion. So when
Yeah.
you have this stuff that you made a mistake and it's the end of the world, first of all, check in and see if it's the end of the world. Really, right? Like
Right.
factually kind of look around. But second of all, say, hi, Grandma Cindy. Like how
Mm.
can you honor that emotion that's in your body, but not be it? So, I want to be
Right.
careful about giving him more than he can handle. And he's very much like, you're teaching me too much. Stop
Right.
talking. So I'm aware
Oh
of
my
that too.
gosh. Yes.
But how I am trying, over time, this information or these learnings become integrated enough where they can start to be just
Yeah.
fluidly part of my parenting.
Right. Oh, that's so beautiful. And thank you for sharing that he reaches his capacity while you still have words, because that's certainly the experience that I have with my daughter. She's
Yeah.
11, and she'll just say, Mom,
Yeah.
I don't like all this queen stuff. I'm like, well, listen here, because it's what's getting you this beautiful life that you have.
Right.
So she's like, why can't you just say, that's sad? Or why can't you just be sad with me? Because I'll tell her, like, well, you can create a new thought or you
Yeah.
can tell a new story. So I am learning to not reject my own learnings, but to use gentle language that is a
Yeah.
beautiful invitation for her, not something that she rejects because she thinks my situation is an eye roll or something.
Yes.
Like it's like we know, we're doing all this work to know that we're having our own experience and everybody else is having theirs, but there's this recalibration in the parenting relationship
Hmm.
because there is, of course, we're enmeshed. Like that's
Yeah.
just like what you are until you're not. But when you're doing it consciously and doing it, I mean, parenting already takes all day long, every day, but
Yeah.
conscious parenting takes like 5 days for every day. So there's this like, oh, I'm being mindful of my experience and your experience and
Yeah.
what's not being said. And you're introverted and I'm extroverted. And you
Yeah.
hear something totally different when you're at your dad's. And like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah. It's there's no tidy answer. And of course there's no tidy answer in life,
darn
but
it.
parenting certainly puts that on great display.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and I think for me, parenting is, it's like I've learned all these things about myself and I've let go of so many attachments and I'm real attached to my living for my son Jameson and I'm really
oh,
attached to his living. It's like I have work to do there to really find total peace. I don't know, I think a lot of spiritual teachers don't have kids.
I
And so there's an element
agree.
of like, I
Yes.
get it. And I'm so grateful for their teachings. And I'm also like, who is a kid and is doing this? So I can just
Right.
model, I mean, again, I'm very clear that we all have the answers within. So I don't actually need that
Totally.
model. But sometimes I'm like, okay, I love that lesson. And I've got to figure out how to make that work as a parent.
Right. Because I'm not just going to put her on a plane
Yeah.
because, yeah. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the guidance is like
Right.
you
And
don't have a child, which I used to be so irritated by that comment when I was
yeah.
trying to have a child for decades, but
Yeah.
now I do understand there's a difference.
Well, but this is the thing, right? Like everybody's path gets to be right for them, right? And
Exactly.
so this
Yeah.
is where it's like I wouldn't tell anybody else on any other path, anybody else what to do because all I know is mine.
Hmm.
And I know that over and over and over I've heard people's teachings and sometimes what happens is it resonates right now and it's like, yes, I'm going
Yeah.
to start setting those boundaries because right now I've never set boundaries before and this is feeling great and this is what I need and anger is boundaries, all this stuff. And then you get, years down the road where you've kind of gone through some revolutions and it just hits you differently because you're in a different place. So it's not that the teaching was right, was wrong, is wrong. It's that it worked for you for a little bit,
Right.
and now something else is working for you.
Yeah.
And I was listening to someone the other day who was they were asked why they stopped running from their emotions, and their response was just felt like the truest thing anyone's ever said, which was just it just wasn't working for me anymore.
Hmm.
And that's
Yep.
really kind of like
Yeah.
you do what you do until it stops working for you
Right.
and then
Right.
you'll do something else and then at some point that will it's like that's what they say these teachings are a help at some point and at some point they actually stand in the way of you in truth so you
Absolutely.
harvest what you can and then at some point you let that go so that you can find a truer way but
Right.
then that truer way will make way for the next.
Exactly. And I find that not only in principles or practices, but also in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, a marriage can last. Of course, God bless the marriages that do. Like, that's so
Yeah,
beautiful. And if those marriages are looking like a marriage that appeals to me, it's not because they've done the same thing the same way for 45 years.
sure.
It's because they grew at a rate that tolerated and called up, not tolerated, but I can't think of the right word, but it created an environment of continual expansion and growth and evolution and love that both people were committed to themselves. And that's what I believe the elements would be to have a relationship that appeals to me
Yeah.
with that kind of longevity. I have not found that in my experiences so far, but I have also never been the woman that I am now.
Right.
And my consciousness attracted what I had then. And I was growing in one direction, and my husband's were growing in other directions. And
Yeah.
like you said, it was working until it wasn't. And
Yeah.
then it just wasn't working for me anymore
Right.
or for them, right? It's
Right.
always liberation is a two-way street.
Right.
Okay. I could talk to you all day about this, so I don't want to go like on a 45-minute tangent, but I would love to hear like what, now that the book is out and now
Mhm.
that you're starting on book number two, like what is your trajectory? What are your hopes and goals and dreams for this project and how it is morphing into the next as well?
Well, I'll go back to when I wrote this book. At one point, I had writer's block, and my editor led me through this exercise to sink down into my body and ask the book what it wanted to be. And the book
Mm,
said that it was for me. It said that it was here to nourish me. And I have read the book, I mean, lots of times, 100 plus
mhm.
times. And I recorded the audiobook and I've listened to that. I mean, just like it is so, it is so nurturing to me, and it is warm, and it is like a hug. And so for me, there was this element of like, gosh, I'm so grateful for this. But I also imagine that other people would find that warmth and that hug and, those things to be something lovely for them. But you just don't know. It's kind of like to each his own. Again, like this could be the book that is for one person, and that's enough. It's enough that
Right.
it's for me. But it has started to, make its way in the world, and I get these texts and I get these, emails and people who are telling me how much it means to them, and so, what's neat about it for me is that there's this element of I don't need it to be. I've worked through enough. At times I wanted
Right.
it to be important, and I needed a fear about money. Like I've worked through lots of things where I did need it to sell.
Sure.
And where I've ended up with it, in this moment is that it's beautiful, and people are telling me that the most common feedback I get is that people read it, they can't put it down, they read it in one sitting,
Hmm.
and that it's raw and inspiring and all of these things. So I'm getting this feedback that says, yeah, this is something that there's space to share. So my hope is now shifted from what do I need, what do I need in terms of sales or these kind of outward reflections, but how can I just share this as well as I can? So I just recently someone sent me a text about reading it in one sitting, and it just kind of been piling up, and it just clicked where I was like, oh, I want to get thousands of copies of this book out into the world, without, I don't care how it happens. I just trust that this is the right thing, and I'll be
Yeah.
supported in that. So um, that is what I'm doing right now, is doing everything I know to do. For a while there was kind of like, are you going to coach? Are you going to lead retreats? Almost like I needed to do something else, but
Mm,
I'm
right.
just here to do this book right now,
Yeah.
and the second book as well. But it really is just about this. This is such a loving message and such an encouraging one that I'm just here to share it.
Yeah.
And so that's really opened up a lot for me in the last week. I think that's probably partly why the second book got started. Is like, oh, I don't need anyone else to tell me what this is. This is for me. But the other thing I just will mention is that as we were talking early about redefining love, what is love, and if love is just a state of being and not needing something from someone else or needing to be something to someone else,
Right.
then my relationships with people can look different now, right? Because i'm not
Mhm.
i'm not needing that validation, I'm not needing
Right.
to avoid something from my childhood and having them
Yeah.
compensate for that. So then I can go be with people and just be exactly who I am, and let them be exactly who they are, and there's
Yeah.
just this lovely being together.
Right.
And so I also see how this book being for me, when I don't need it to be other things for other people, as I'm getting this, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it.
Oh, no, no, it's good. Yes.
You're-
I'm looking
um,
at it too. It's on my
okay.
desk.
As I'm sharing it and I'm getting this really beautiful feedback left and right, it's like, oh, those are gifts from me to me. Like, what a
Yes.
beautiful thing that I wrote this book which is so lovely for me. And now I'm putting it out in the world and planting all these seeds, and I'm getting to see the flowers that are growing from that.
Yes.
Like, what a gift to me. So
Yes.
it's not that I don't care to contribute to other people's lives. It's just that's kind of outside of my knowing and outside of my control. So I'd love to contribute to others if I knew, but all I really know to do is to take care of myself and share my love
Hmm.
in a way that feels good to me. And in doing that, I'm getting this really beautiful experience of seeing the reflections out in the world. So that's
Yes.
just a really fun thing right now.
It's so beautiful. And it's true it's like what this whole podcast is about. Everybody wins when we say yes to ourselves.
Yeah,
We think that we need to take care of everybody else, and then with whatever's left over, we'll take care of us, and that will somehow is a sustainable model, which it is
right,
not. And when you allowed this book to be the gift that it is to you, it can't help but be a gift to others.
right. That's just the way it works.
It's so gorgeous. I
Hmm.
love this universal math. It just,
It is really,
everybody
it is
wins, and love is
quite
always the
wonderful.
answer. And
Yeah,
anything that's not love is an illusion. Like it's all just, it's just good, beautiful reminders that we really are only equipped to manage and live into and lean into our own experience and what feels good and right and aligned in this moment in time,
yeah,
and do that and have the impulse, hear the voice in the woods, have the impulse to take the next right step and just keep going. And then, of course, you only see the path when you look back. You're not going to
right.
see, you can't project what the path is going to be, but you can trust that it's going to be a great one and that there'll
Yeah,
be some rocks you have to step over, and you'll also be fine,
yeah,
more than fine.
yeah.
It's so good. Thank you so much for your time. I have loved this
Oh,
conversation.
me too. This has been great.
Please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, how they can get their own copy of the book, all the good things.
Okay, so my website is alexisleigh.com, and that's where you can, find more about me. I'm listing my podcast and things on there, but um, I also am just in this effort to get the book out into the world. I'm offering to send anybody who wants a book a free one. So if you contact
Yay!
me on my website, I will send you a book. And it's also available on all the online outlets as well. But I would be delighted to send a book or two to anybody who might like one. So please contact me there. I'd be excited to hear from you.
So fun. We will link everything down in the show notes, but please also tell us about the podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said that in a way that sounded confusing.
Oh, it's
I
okay.
podcast episodes with wonderful hosts like you. So I'm
Wonderful.
doing a slew
Okay.
of podcast guest appearances so that I can, just share the message a bit more.
I think it's the most beautiful way to have a book tour
Hmm.
because everyone can show up.
Yeah.
They just have you right in their ear, which is so intimate and fabulous, and no one had to find a parking space, and it's all just so
Yeah.
good.
Well,
It's
thank
so
you so
good.
much. I mean, you're an amazing host. It's such a
Oh,
great, such a fun experience and a fun way for me to share the book and just get to know wonderful people like you. So thank you,
oh,
Wendy.
well, thank you. This will not be the last of our conversations.
No, I'll look forward to more for sure.